who should want John Collins this summer, / where should he want to go? Now, I want you to lead this. I'm going to I think this number is important because this is the number he is going to get given how poor the free agent market is. His max salary starts at $28.1 million next year. He is going to get that money. Maybe there's a 5-year wink deal with the Hawks where he's taking a little less to get that 5th year, and maybe they give him a player option as part of it. Otherwise, he's getting $28.1 million in 21-22. Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're looking at one of the teams that's going to have cap space, because I get the sense that if he does leave, and I don't want to rule out the possibility that he does stay, especially if Atlanta is competitive against Philadelphia in the second round series, again, assuming they're able to close out the Knicks. I think that he would want an opportunity to actually be a featured player, because that's been the biggest concern in Atlanta, is that there just haven't been enough touches to go around. He was more involved in the offense earlier in his still young career. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him sign a big deal with the Detroit Pistons or the San Antonio Spurs. The landing spot I really like for him, though, is Minnesota. It'd probably have to be done by a sign and trade, but I like the idea of just continuing to lead into an all-out offensive explosion there.
If we had video and everyone...
Yeah, you're making a disgusted face.
You should probably screenshot it so that we could reuse those reaction face. That is a terrible fit for him. I know they defended better moving on, but you want to be a featured option, so put him alongside Anthony Edwards, Towns, and D'Angelo Russell.
Right. That doesn't quite align with that first part of the thinking, but that's going to be a location where he's going to get to run and get to put up shots because there's so much offensive attention elsewhere, and it's going to be a competitive team on the rise.
I agree that he might want a larger offensive role, and we didn't even see the full breadth of the Hawks this year because of all the injuries. DeAndre Hunter was a pretty big part of the offense when he was injured. He was probably not their best, but definitely their most consistent player at that time. People don't remember this. We've been trolled, or I've been trolled by our listeners for mentioning this. He was leading the most improved player discussion when he was injured, or he was at least among the top 3. And I know that was super early on. I think if he's going to leave, it needs to be a sign and trade, because if I'm the Hawks, I'm not losing him for nothing. And if you go and sign a max offer sheet with whoever, okay, great, we're just going to match it and we'll figure it out from there. And if you're going to keep him, then you're going to look at having to move Gallo or something, because there's just, given how well Clint Capella has played, if you care about Onyeka Okongwu at all, that's just those 4 guys long term. I don't think it sticks like that. And you do have to start worrying about playing Trae Young's extension eligible. DeAndre Hunter's going to be extension eligible the year after that. Cam Reddish as well. You still have Bogey on the books for 3 years. Clint Capella's going to need a new deal soon. So I'm not ruling out a return to Atlanta. That's probably the most likely scenario, just because
I think it is.
It's restricted free agency. So he might sign an offer sheet. They're going to say, hey, you want Max? Go find Max. And they'll match it. If he wants to leave, it behooves him to work with the team and see if he can broker a sign and trade. The places I like for him, San Antonio would be interesting. He doesn't feel like a Spurs player. I'd really like him there. I would love, and they'll never do this because they won't burn their cap space, but the Thunder would be fun as hell. Him and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is sort of their 1-2 punch, but they're not going to want to pay.
It seems a year early for that, yeah. I struggle to find landing spots for him.
I know people are going to mention, and they can get to the cap space necessary, Dallas, but unless the Hawks want Kristaps Porzingis as part of a sign and trade, and they shouldn't, let's just make that clear. I don't like the Kristaps John Collins fit. There's questions with, Kristaps won't hurt your defense, but there are nights where he's not going to augment it. And you place him next to John Collins, who is not Maxi Kleber in the sense that you can say, hey, go defend Kawhi. That's going to complicate matters a little bit. But you're right. There's not teams where you're looking at cap space. Miami would be kind of interesting. Do you like him and Bam together up front?
Yeah, I think it's a pairing that makes sense. I just don't really see it happening. If that's one place where if he were to sign an offer sheet, Atlanta would match for sure, because you don't want to be playing against him more frequently.
I have one more team as well, and I'll mention another team. The Knicks have, I think, the second most cap space behind depending on what they do with their own guys, obviously, behind the Thunder and maybe behind the Spurs at this point. That just doesn't work. We're talking about like Toppin and Randall, like the John Collins Randall thing is not going to be much better defensively. They could, if they don't keep Kyle Lowry, Toronto's pretty Pascal, John Collins in the front court with little Chris Boucher. It's a 3-man rotation right there. Ken Burch probably comes back.
I mean, sure. I don't know. For some reason, I just don't love that one.
Why? I need a reason.
I can't really come up with it. I think that you're too far away from having the five, a legitimate five who can play big minutes there. You're fully committing to small ball, and I'm not sure that that's going to make as much sense if we're talking about a post Kyle Lowry era.
I guess it just feels like they could come up with a platoon center guarding, because I think it's more of a problem defensively, clearly, between Siakam, John Collins, Boucher. If you bring back Birch, you've had OG guard a ton of fives anyway. I feel like it would work pretty well.
I've realized, having spent way too much time thinking about John Collins, that I very much enjoy watching him play and think that he is a legitimate high upside talent. And at the same time, I don't love his fit in that many places.
He is one of those players. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a really strange conundrum because he is a 3-point shooting big who has shown that he has like some defensive chops in the past. He's a high energy player, but he doesn't make that sense. He doesn't make much sense in that many locations.
It's like a healthy Kevin Love situation. We're still a really good basketball player. Different players. I want to make that clear. Kevin Love's a much better passer, can create more of his own offense from the post. But where would Kevin Love fit? Everyone's saying the Cavs have to trade him. They have to trade him. Who wants? And when you're throwing, if it's John Collins on a rookie scale deal, 29 teams.
Right.
When you're talking about John Collins on a max contract, that's where the Kevin Love equation comes in.
And maybe it's just that he might be one of those guys like earlier career Kevin Love, where he really just is best putting up big numbers on mediocre teams. And that's okay. Like, there have been plenty of those guys in the past, and they're super fun. But that might be who he is.
Your official prediction would be John
I think
Collins
he's staying in Atlanta. Yeah. The front office committed so much this past offseason. I don't think it saw during the regular season, at least, what that team could be. And there is an opportunity to keep it together.
Do you see they would have to view him as someone who can play the five or think they could plug the five cheaply? The Hornets would probably be a dark horse to go after him.
Man, him and LaMelo Ball would be really fun.
It's just him and PJ Washington as a front court on offense, a ton of fun too.
But defense,
I don't know what happens. Can you get a center on the cheap though? Because there are sometimes you find diamonds in the rough, but you don't want to get to a point where it would be iffy. But I think they're a dark horse to go after him because they're going to have cap space, and it's the Michael Jordan controlled Hornets, and they are a wild card in the offseason, I think, to say the least.